Mike, I do want to start with where Greg left off. And if we do hear from the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court indeed undercuts the president's signature economic plan, what's the backup plan for tariffs if IEEPA is ruled unconstitutional?
Well, the White House hasn't said specifically, but they've given every indication that what they would do is rely on a number of other trade laws that Congress has passed to give the president powers to impose tariffs. Some are on national security, some are on unfair trade. But basically, they all require the administration to make a case, to come up with a reason that the tariffs are being employed on a either country-by-country basis or a product-by-product basis. And so that takes a while. Now, obviously, the administration, knowing that this is a possibility, has been working on those kinds of reports, and it probably wouldn't take them too long to put them out there. There's also one other section in the trade law that allows the president, if he can determine that there has been unfair discrimination against U.S. products, he could impose tariffs for, I think, 120 days. And so he could do that unilaterally. And so probably what would happen if the court struck it down is he would try to put as many tariffs as would fit under that into that 120-day period and then use that time to come up with the other justifications for different tariffs. Some tariffs will go away, but there would still be a lot.
So other levers for him to pull. I mean, what does it mean for the U.S. economy in terms of how this plays out? Because it sounds like no matter what, we are going to continue paying higher costs for things, right? Because we just are, right?
Because tariffs are a tax on us. Yes, we're going to be paying higher costs. The interesting thing is that the total cost has not been, and you've seen it in the inflation numbers when we get them, they haven't been as dramatic as a lot of people thought. And one reason—
Why is that?
Well, one reason for that is that the president has backed off on a lot of tariffs. Another is that so many companies stocked up on goods before the tariffs went into effect. So there have been a lot of reasons why they haven't been as bad, but they're still up there, and we would still be paying. But probably the biggest impact would be just extending the confusion and the uncertainty about the impacts and how it's going to affect company decisions for longer.
Yeah, so the question is let's say the tariffs are left in place. Companies run through that inventory that they bought before these tariffs went into effect. Does that mean we will start to see some increases and maybe inflationary issues start to rear its head later this year?
That does seem to be the case. Companies have started more and more to say, we're probably at our limit of what we can absorb, and so we will have to raise prices. Nobody wants to be first, so there's kind of a holding off on that.
And I would imagine companies don't really want to say we're raising prices as a result of tariffs.
No, I won't even mention the products, but I did notice in the store the other day that a certain product is in a smaller bag now. So you're going to see shrinkflation. But there was a recent study by Geeta Gopinath, who was the former IMF chief economist, and a couple of other authors that found that Americans basically are paying something like 98% of the tariffs. The idea that other countries are absorbing them is not happening right now.
So if they were struck down, the president didn't pull any other levers, there would be more money in Americans' pocketbooks.
Yes. Now, it's part of the reason he's been able to be successful at this is we're talking about product by product, and it's very small amounts at a time, and companies haven't come out and put a sign up that says we're going to be charging you more because of the tariffs. If that were the case, then people would be angry. But we're still upset about the price of things.
Right.
We're just not associating it necessarily with tariffs.
Companies don't usually cut prices, do they? Like once they hit?
That's why the idea that you can bring prices down is incorrect. You can bring the rate of inflation, how fast they go up, down, but you can't bring the prices themselves down.
Anecdotally, buying a pair of mittens Saturday morning for my son, I was in a store, balked at the price, and the person behind the counter said, those tariffs hit this stuff really hard. So yeah, this stuff is getting expensive. Hey, Mike, before we let you go, the decline in energy prices and oil prices, does that offset if Americans are paying less at the pump? Does it offset if they're paying more for other stuff?
It does to a certain extent, yes. I mean, the money that would have gone to the gas station now can be attributed to something else. It's not the president's policies that are bringing down gas prices, though. It's basically the oversupply of oil that is out there. But that is something of an offset, as will be the additional tax refunds that people get this year because of the tax cut bill they passed last year. So there is some tailwind to the headwind that we're going to be getting.
Hey, one other thing before you go. It's kind of a big week when it comes to economic data, right? We get the monthly jobs report on Friday. We've also had a bunch of Fed speakers out there. Bill Dudley has a column about the Fed's 6 big challenges in 2026. What's important this week?
Jobs is literally everything this week. It's the first clean read we've had since September, and so there's going to be a lot of study of that and what it tells us. What's interesting is we've seen this decline in the number of jobs created each month, which would give ammunition to those who want Fed rate cuts, but we were also expecting the unemployment rate to go down, at least according to the Bloomberg survey consensus, and if that happens, it says, don't cut rates anymore. So we're going to get some interesting data, and it'll give us a clearer picture of where the economy is, but it probably is not going to give us a clear picture of where rates are going.
So Governor Stephen Myron, who says that a full point of rate cuts is needed this year, you don't think that'll happen?
No, that's not going to happen.
Even if a dovish Fed chair comes in?
Even if a dovish Fed chair comes in, I would say that, yes, it could happen if we go into recession or something terrible happens. But barring that, the majority of the Fed seems to think we're very close to neutral, and they've forecast 1 rate cut this year. They could do 2 maybe, but you're not going to get really more than that.
When are we going to know about the Fed chair? I thought we were supposed to know it before the end of last year.
I guess the answer with Donald Trump is always 2 weeks, but
we were supposed to get it before the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of
he said
signaling.
Sometime in January. So we just really don't have any idea. He may be still trying to convince Scott Bessent to take the job.
Well, and just since we have a moment more, we're going to head out to CES and Caroline Hyde in just a second. But one of the things that caught me, I was reading through some stories on the Bloomberg. Federal student loan debt rose to nearly $1.7 trillion at the end of 2025, up $54 billion from a year earlier. More of it concentrated among large debt holders and older Americans. I keep thinking about student debt, inflation, higher healthcare insurance costs, you name it. I mean, Americans are increasingly being pinched.
Obviously, and the K-shaped economy, the bottom leg of the K is getting longer as it brings in more people. But it is true with student loans, a lot of that is people who went to medical school or law school, and they had higher bills. And, well, I mean, they in theory have more income to pay that back. But we're also seeing, ever since the student loan moratoriums ended, people kind of never picked up paying again.
Yeah.
So that's a problem overall. And they started allocating that money to something else. And now they're kind of stuck because they bought something else with it instead of paying back their loans.